The Supreme Court says a Maryland man has to be brought back to the US after being deported and locked up in El Salvador. But no word on when or if he's coming home.
The US and Iran resume talks on Iran's nuclear program.
And candidates for mayor come to Columbia taking questions about the city, cuts to higher education, and campus protests.
Those stories and more coming up on CJS News.
Good afternoon. I'm Carolina Pedrazzi.
And I'm John Williams. Welcome to CJS News. We begin with breaking news. Multiple people have been hospitalized after a school shooting at Florida State University in Tallahassee. Police are on the scene and students and faculty are sheltering in place. Police have one person in custody.
And earlier today, Columbia students and professors gathered on campus to mark 1 year since the Gaza Solidarity encampment. Protesters spoke out against the arrest of 2 Palestinian Columbia students and what they see as the university bowing to the Trump administration.
I think a lot of the student body is scared. Scared to show up because of the chilling actions of this university.
The protest started in the middle of campus and then demonstrators marched to Broadway. The Trump administration expands its crackdown on ICE arrests and deportations. Yesterday, the Justice Department released documents that it claims shows Kilmar Abrego Garcia was affiliated with MS-13, a Salvadoran gang in the US. During a meeting at the White House earlier this week, El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele and President Trump refused to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the US. The Maryland man was wrongfully deported after an administrative error. Abrego Garcia is being held in one of El Salvador's gang prisons, despite a 9-0 Supreme Court ruling ordering the Trump administration to facilitate his return. Meanwhile, the Trump administration's crackdown on student protesters continues. This week, legal U.S. resident and Columbia University student Mohsin Mahdawi was detained by ICE as he arrived at a Citizenship and Immigration Services office in Vermont to take his naturalization exam. Mahdawi had been involved in campus protests against Israel's war in Gaza. He now faces deportation to the West Bank, where advocates warn his life could be in danger if he's placed in Israeli detention. Mahdawi is the 9th Columbia University student targeted for deportation. Nationwide, the number of student visa revocations is climbing into the hundreds. A Louisiana immigration judge ruled in favor of deporting Mahmoud Khalil, agreeing with the Trump administration that his presence poses potentially serious foreign policy consequences. Khalil, the first student detained in this crackdown over a month ago, remains in custody, though he has not been charged with any crime. Rumeisa Osturk, a student at Tufts University, also remains in ICE custody despite a Sunday report from the Washington Post revealing the State Department had found no evidence that she engaged in anti-Semitic behavior or supported terrorism. In a statement obtained by NBC News, Osturk described the Louisiana ICE facility as inhumane and unsafe. She says her hijab was forcibly removed and her asthma has gone untreated.
Across the country today, there are protests in response to the federal government's crackdown on college campuses. CJS reporter Yumna Sukar is live at one of those protests in Washington Square Park. Yumna, can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect to see over the next few hours?
Absolutely, John. They're here today to rally against what they say is a loss of academic freedom. Organizers expect hundreds of people to turn up as they continue to march from Washington Square Park to here in Foley Square, with one goal in mind: the right to learn.
Hundreds of students, educators and elected officials pour out of Washington Square Park ahead of a rally for higher education. Their message to the Trump administration: hands off their students and hands off higher education.
Professors are not easy always to organize, and they often like to be in their labs or their offices or the library by themselves. And the fact that we have this unprecedentedly large coalition of university faculty groups coming together, and we're all organizing and making common cause, even though, we represent different kinds of institutions and different types of employment.
Over 100 college campuses and education coalitions across the country are involved in this day of action, rallying delivering petitions and hosting panels to demand a future free from coercion and censorship in higher education.
Schools are being disallowed from teaching students important information.
Since taking office, President Trump has threatened educational institutions with federal grant freezes if they don't follow his administration's requests. Last month, Columbia University, the epicenter of last year's pro-Palestine protests, complied. But earlier this week, Harvard became the first school to push back, the school's president writing in a statement, quote, "Neither Harvard nor any private university can allow itself to be taken over by the federal government." On Wednesday, Republican Representative Elise Stefanik defended the Trump administration's response to freeze $2 billion in grants.
These schools are not entitled to U.S. taxpayer dollars if they're not living up to the standards and not protecting civil rights of Jewish students.
But organizers say that education should be apolitical and that today's rally is for the right to learn.
Because we're educators organizing this, we believe that people who come in to the rally with one set of ideas might come out from the rally with a new set of ideas.
Organizers say we can see more events like this moving forward, and that the Trump administration's crackdown on campuses is only adding more fuel to their fire. Live from Lower Manhattan, Yumna Sukar, CJS News.
Now in foreign policy news. The US and Iran are talking about limiting Iran's nuclear capabilities in exchange for easing US economic sanctions. This after a weekend meeting in Oman and another scheduled for this Saturday in Rome. Earlier, I spoke with Richard Nephew, a senior researcher at the Center on Global Energy Policy. Thank you for joining us. This initial round of talks has been described as constructive. What realistically can be expected?
And I think we need to keep our expectations in check because the distance between the U.S. and Iranian positions is still pretty considerable. Problem one is U.S. expectations for what a deal should cover and whether or not we're asking for something that the Iranians just can't simply provide or won't provide. I mean, they could do a number of different things. And whether or not the Iranians can be convinced that the United States is to be trusted after we backed out of a deal in 2018 under this president.
And what leverage does the U.S. actually have?
Well, I think the United States has got considerable leverage still, in terms of economic pressure and the ability to use military force.
Ahead of the talks, some Israeli politicians called for a Libya model to be applied to Iran, referring to the full dismantlement of nuclear capability. To what extent will U.S. negotiators take Israel's requests into account?
Well, I think the United States will take Israel's requests into consideration, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be determinative. I think Trump doesn't fully trust Netanyahu on this. So, when the Libya model gets brought up, we're talking about considerable intrusive access into Iran's military programs to achieve that. I can't conceive that is seen as a positive in Trump's mindset as he's trying to think about how to balance all these various different interests.
Mr. Nephew, thank you again for your insights and your time.
Closer to home, the New York City mayoral race is heating up, and the journalism school hosted a campaign forum. Reporter Christine Stoddard was there, and she joins us with the story. Christine.
There are 10 candidates running for mayor. 6 of them joined the forum and got a chance to share their vision for the city and take questions from Columbia students. On Monday, Columbia Journalism School hosted a mayoral forum. Democratic nominee hopefuls Adrian Adams, Michael Blake, Whitney Tilson, Jessica Ramos, and Zelnor Miri all participated. Plus, there was independent Jim Walden. But the real tea, every candidate was asked about Columbia, their thoughts on federal funding cuts.
As mayor of this city, it would again be my responsibility to speak out against these federal cuts.
I think we have to utilize the 10th Amendment in the same way to protect our local institutions and ensure that there are no unconstitutional grabs.
And what about banning face coverings during protests?
Would you have sent in the NYPD here into campus? No.
But sending in the NYPD to harm students, Hell no, that's not what any mayor should be doing.
Yes, I know that's not going to win me many fans in the room, but again, I fully support peaceful protest as much as I agree with it. When it comes to storming buildings and vandalism and so forth, I would have liked to think campus security there should have been more campus security. It was creating a very unsafe environment for Jewish students.
And what about banning face coverings during protests?
Face coverings has never been a good idea. This is why we got rid of it with the KKK. This is what allows people to go from speech to hate speech to hate conduct because there's no consequences. Face coverings are a bad policy regardless of who the protesters are.
Christine, how did the audience react to all of this?
Well, definitely Tilson's remarks about anti-Semitic behavior taking place on campus got a reaction. Carolina, I heard people say that that wasn't true and that those things did not happen.
Thank you, Christine. John?
Well, I hope you got your taxes in because this week was the deadline. CJS reporter Callum Foote takes us to Lower Manhattan, where demonstrators are protesting tax cuts for the wealthy. Callum.
It's tax day, the day Americans dig through 1099s and W-2s. But here in Midtown, crowds have gathered to protest the growing wealth of billionaires.
Protesters with the People's Forum, a left-leaning group, used tax day to make a point, demanding the Trump administration use taxpayer money for things like healthcare and housing, rather than the military. President Trump recently announced the Pentagon's budget next year would increase to a record $1 trillion.
So, when people say they're mad about their taxes, our answer should be hell yeah!
Protesters gathered at the headquarters of the U.S. Postal Service, which President Trump has recently talked about privatizing.
And they're taking our tax money and funding wars abroad when they should be building more schools.
Since Trump took office, more than 60,000 people have lost their public sector jobs, according to the New York Times, including those of the IRS, who audited the ultra-wealthy. The president says the cuts have reduced government bloat.
My administration will reclaim power from this unaccountable bureaucracy.
What's clear from today's demonstrations is that these protesters believe that both major political parties are failing the American people. They hope to continue to organize and have scheduled another rally for April 19th. Midtown Manhattan, CJS News, Callum Foote.
This is a big week for women's sports. The WNBA draft took place on Monday, but equal pay for female athletes is still a work in progress. CJS reporter Blythe Rees has that story and tells us about a new local business that's hoping to keep women's sports front and center.
Here's Beckers.
She shoots.
Her jumper is good.
And she scores. All eyes are on Paige Beckers. She led the UConn women's basketball team to a championship victory, and just this week was the first pick of the WNBA draft.
The Dallas Wings select Paige Beckers, University of Connecticut.
Her salary is projected to be about $79,000 for her first season, but the minimum starting salary for an NBA player is over $1.1 million. That's nearly 14 times what Paige is projected to be making. In the WNBA, the minimum starting salary is $66,000. That's nearly 18 times less than the NBA.
Obviously, the off-the-court stuff is booming right now, but you would like to get paid for what you are the best in the world at. Yeah. And that's what the WNBA is.
On average, male athletes make anywhere from 15 to 100% more than female athletes, according to a study by Adelphi University. This is despite the fact that in the WNBA, there was an 170% increase in viewership from last year to this year. And it's not just basketball. The U.S. national women's soccer team saw an 18,000-person sold-out crowd when they played Brazil last week. And even for the Olympics, 42% of people said that women's gymnastics was their top viewing choice.
The last 2 years we've had watch parties that have been completely packed.
Al Murray and Claudia Capriles are opening Athena Kiki's, a sports bar in Clinton Hill, Brooklyn that only shows women's sports.
New York needs more bars showing women's sports and more bars just focusing on women's sports for sure.
In 2022, the U.S. women's soccer team succeeded in their fight to be paid the same wages as the U.S. men's team. Congress also passed the Equal Pay for Team USA Act in 2023 that requires that all athletes who represent Team USA on a global stage get paid the same salary regardless of their gender. These are significant wins, but some sports, like women's basketball, are still waiting to even the score. Blythe Reese, CJS News.
Thanks, Blythe. Athena Kiki's is set to open in Brooklyn this summer. Staying local, John, I hear you were in Harlem for an important event this weekend.
Yes, I'm a proud graduate of the premier historically black college and university, Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University. You can sense the pride, right? I spent Sunday in Harlem at HBCU Springcoming, the world's largest HBCU alumni festival. On Sunday, right here at Riverbank Park in Harlem, HBCU Springcoming, the world's largest HBCU alumni festival, was a chance for people who graduated from historically black colleges and universities and the community to come together for fun and fellowship.
This is an opportunity for us to jumpstart that HBCU excellence, that black excellence, that black community that's really important, especially in this day and age.
Sponsors like the U.S. Tennis Association, Indeed, and Disney Plus offer corporate support and engagement that helps expand this event's impact. To date, HBCU Springcoming has awarded nearly $500,000 in scholarships to over 150 students attending HBCUs across the nation.
It's really important because we want to make sure our schools still exist. And so giving back to the community, giving back to the students, making sure that they get to have the same experience that we had is really important.
Alicia Leonard's daughter, Adria, is one of this year's recipients who will be attending Florida A&M University and studying criminal justice.
Her obtaining the scholarship, we are so grateful because it is definitely going to help with the burden, the financial burden.
In a time when higher education institutions in this country are under attack, this community is providing safe space.
Well, it's a lovely opportunity for the community to come together, John.
Indeed, it was. It was a great time. This was the 10-year anniversary celebration, and it was amazing.
And now a festival that's a feast of flavors. Dragonfest opened this week. CJS reporter Juliana Giaccone takes us on a tour of Chinese food and culture.
I'm here standing outside of Dragonfest. It's the first day here, and this is the largest Chinese food festival in New York City.
The annual festival in Manhattan celebrates Chinese food, art, and culture. And it's a way for over 100 Chinese restaurants and small businesses to connect with New Yorkers. I spoke with vendors at the event's kickoff week who say the festival is important for their business's visibility and growth. The owner of Bao Zhang started the business during the pandemic, and they have taken part in the festival since 2023. Because our store is in Flushing, if we come here to join the festival, it will make people know our place, and it increases the popularity of our business. Last year, over 500,000 people came to Dragonfest. While some vendors sell traditional Chinese dishes, others, like Huaxi, offer handmade treats with a contemporary artistic twist. This is their first year at the festival.
The fact that we really just started this maybe a few months ago, and we're looking for opportunities just sort of to get in front of people. So much of it is, showing people that this product exists. Even if they don't buy, they know that we exist, where to find us.
Owner Adeline Cui says the event comes at a time when celebrating diversity feels especially important.
I like to think that being out here shows that we are proud and we're not afraid.
Cui and others hope that sharing their food and culture will help their brands flourish and bring the city some much-needed joy. Reporting from Astor Place, this is Juliana Giaccone, CJS News.
Oh my God. Did you see all of those options? They look so good.
I know. I wish I had been there. Now I'm so hungry myself.
That's going to do it for us. Thanks for watching CJS News. I'm John Williams.
And I'm Carolina Pedrazzi. We'll see you next time.